people think messaging is about shiny outside. Shiny outside does shit for your revenue because you get people that will buy from you and they will not spend any more money with you. The funnels work not because it's a funnel or because of the email sequences. It's because when people buy, they're like, this is incredible. This moved the needle for me. And so the reason why we're able to do that kind of revenue, we've normalized and stabilized $1 million month since April 2024 is when I hit my first $1 million month. And we've sustained it. That's where the money comes from, is the compounding behind the scenes.
Okay, I want to jump right in because you, I want 5 days with you, but we've got like 90 minutes. So in the 5 years we just had mentioned, you went from the 0 to 23 million in revenue in 2025 alone. Could you take us back to the beginning of how you started, but more importantly, where were you at mentally around that time as well?
Yeah, so I did 11 years in corporate in like big executive roles in purchasing and operations. So I was in the glamorous world of food retail and discount food retail nonetheless. So anyone know Aldi, the German?
Oh yeah.
I worked for Aldi for almost 10 years.
And
I'll tell you now, Aldi taught me everything I know about running a wildly productive and very profitable business. So they are one of the most efficient businesses on the planet, and we ran incredibly low payroll. So I learned at Aldi a couple key skills, which I think are really important to my story, which was how to do more with less was literally what I mastered in my time there. They also loved taking young graduates straight out of college, and it was like the military. They would just like mold you into what they wanted you to be. But it came with great opportunity. That's how I actually ended up in the States. So they sent me to America to help with the expansion. Then they promoted me to purchasing director for produce. And I traveled the world buying avocados and mangoes and making deals with farmers. And you learn more about those types of, more about humans and psychology from those types of experiences than you do in anything else. So I had 11 years with a big variety, but I really hesitated on starting my own business. And my husband was actually the one that was like, you have to start your own company. He was like, if you work this hard for other people, like imagine what you could do for yourself. So I didn't actually go full time, even though being at that event, I actually didn't go full time until the end of 2020 is when I finally walked away from my corporate consulting role. And so my first full year in business was 2021. And that was when it was very like big in the industry. The live launch model was a biggie, right? So I knew I wanted to be a coach. I just knew in my bones, just watching people in rooms, that I was like, I'm meant to be a coach. People had always been my thing, but I had no idea what type of coach. And so by the end of like the kind of middle of 2021, I was still the productivity queen. In fact, I was still the productivity queen until I think January of 2024. So it wasn't even that long ago that I rebranded to Rich Queen. But I started by helping women with productivity because that's what I knew. And it very quickly turned into business coaching once people came into, they were like, how are you getting clients? How are you doing this? So I spent 2021 and the first quarter of 2022 really making all of my money through every 6 weeks, I would do a 3-day live launch where I would like give my internal organs to everybody that signed up. And I gave, and I had such a reputation for being the type of woman who people would come and be like, I got more from this than most masterminds I've invested in, but then they wouldn't buy my stuff because I was giving so much away. And I was doing hundreds of sales calls. So I was having my second son, Lennox, in April of 2022. And I am a woman of either or. Like that's always been the case for me. So it was like, I'm not quitting like my scale, like building something big because I'm having a baby. So I decided that it would be my first $1 million year, even though that made absolutely no sense. And I was going to completely walk away from live launching. And in doing so, I had to master my messaging. Because when I looked at the industry and the women that were making obscene amounts of money, like to me at the time, I was like, there are women doing 500K months, like even 100K months. I remember looking at Justin and being like, imagine if I could do like $100,000 a month. I realized that the difference between me and them was their messaging. It was their level of audacity, their level of conviction, the way they spoke about themselves and their work. And I was convincing people in a live launch, whereas they were showing up like, you're fucking crazy if you don't hire me today. And so when Lennox was born, there was something really activating for me about that season. And it kind of forced me off the cliff, right? I don't know how many people here have kids. Okay. So I really went into full experimentation mode. And 2022 was my first $1 million year. The week of Christmas, I actually crossed my first $1 million year, and it was messy. There was nothing like the brand that you see now. I was 30 pounds heavier. I just had a baby. I had a breast pump in all the time, or I had a baby on the boob constantly while I was on calls. Right, girl. That's the secret. So on OnlyFans, no, I'm just kidding. So 2023 was really the year that everything shifted and I started taking my business really seriously. I really anchored and doubled down on building a brand. But I went into like master of everything mode, and I did a $2.4 million year in 2023, but I did 9 live delivered programs. So even though I quit live launching, I then went into 9 live delivered programs and 12 live masterclasses over the course of the year, which was a lot. I had a very small audience. So even 2.4 million at 8,000 followers or whatever it was still like really substantial. And I had been able to quit live launching, quit sales calls. But I realized at the end of 2023, something that is incredibly relevant for this room, I started to notice even in the industry back then, like things are shifting, and this master of everything, this jack of all trades, master of none, this is not going to sustain in this industry. And it was very clear to me that domination was what was going to scale things in a much more simple way. And the irony was, the one thing that I had not taught a program on was the one thing that was my genius, which was messaging. So I taught everything I did. I did a brand program. I did like everything else, but everything I taught was through the lens of messaging, but I didn't even realize I was too close to it. So 2024 is when I really doubled down on, I stripped everything away. I was like, this is the year that I'm only gonna do messaging. I started running ads at the end of 2023. And that's when I started building funnels, which was hilarious because I hate tech. I'm not a tech person. Like ask Brooke, she'll tell you. I absolutely hate tech. But for me, it was obvious that if I didn't build a system around making sales in the business, I was always going to be the system. So 2024 was a big year and substantially shifted things because we did $11 million in 2024 with 4 signature programs. And I'm trying to think how many followers we had back then, but it was like maybe 20,000. And then last year, obviously 23 million from 30,000 followers, which is nuts.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane, especially with what we know about what's happening in the industry right now. Their sales are going down. Their launches are going down. So for somebody to do that.
So we did 2.4, 11 million, and then $23 million year. Yeah.
And when you get
I'm with a tiny
you'll
team
know why,
and a tiny
because
audience.
all of a sudden I was like, do I even need this? And I just kept buying things, and I'm not even kidding.
But here's the thing, and I guarantee every single person in this room has this in common. I always tell people this, like people think messaging is about shiny outside. Shiny outside does shit for your revenue because you get people that will buy from you and they will not spend any more money with you. So I always have been quoted as saying, like, I am the exception because I'm exceptional at what I do. The quality of my work is what actually, the funnels work, not because it's a funnel or because of the email sequences. It's because when people buy, they're like, this is incredible. This moved the needle for me. And so the reason why we're able to do that kind of revenue, we've normalized and stabilized $1 million months since April 2024 is when I hit my first $1 million month. And we've sustained it. It wasn't like a one-hit wonder. The reason why is because we have built programs and offers. Like obviously I'm in the online space, but I do have a physical product and I do have a big portfolio of real estate with my husband. We own a ton of Airbnbs, but I really focused on exceptional offers that were for the few, not the many. And that was the piece that really moved the needle because I was like, less people, better people that want to buy everything that I'm selling. And so our LTV is astronomical. When you look at how much people spend and how quickly they spend it, that's where the money comes from, is the compounding behind the scenes. And they stay. My retention rates are amazing. And this is the biggest thing about, the industry is small. I don't care what industry you guys are in. People talk and your name being mentioned in rooms that you're not even in. Like, I can't even tell you how many times Laurie, Chris, Tracy O'Malley, like Brooke have come up in conversations with people that don't even know we're connected. And that is built from the strength of your brand. And your brand is more than just like how it looks from the outside. It's the experience of it on the inside.
Trust me. So I got in her funnel. I kind of had heard her name but somehow your ads or something found me. Chris came home. I'm like, I'm maybe about to buy a $15,000 mastermind from a woman I have no idea about. I don't even know if she's in it. Like, I think it might just be like programs online. And I was like, it's so good, but it's so like it's not your funnels are just so good because they're insane, but the product is insane. You are such a good teacher, and I can see the years and years of mastery. And it's also the way that you deliver, as you can even see up here, like the amount of time that she has spent on herself to be able to be up here and deliver with such like confidence, clarity, and no one's going to rock her. Like nobody is going to be able to rock her up here. She might feel some kind of way when you go back to your room if someone tried, but like for the most part, she's going to be able to withstand it because of the work that she has done on herself.
But this is why like category of oneness is so important, because I don't know what area of your life right now, if I was to ask you if an area of your life that you feel rock solid in. So you're like, somebody could rock you. Yes. But not around being exceptional at messaging, funnels, my marriage, being a mom. There are areas where you could rock me where I don't feel rock solid. So the power of not just going and teaching just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I could teach a lot of stuff well. Like I am a good deliverer of programs. There are many things that I could talk about. But for me, when I really focused on owning the things that I was actually exceptional at, it became really easy to speak about myself and my work in a way that was so audacious that it made people like, the level of conviction that you talk about yourself with is so important when it comes to sales. And whether it's you or your brand that you're building, it doesn't matter. Like you have to, if you cannot expect other people to talk about you like the best thing since sliced bread, to use a very British expression, if you're not willing to do that. And I think that is something that especially women historically have really struggled with, because it's something that is very, I always joke, like guys will talk about themselves and their brands in a way that women would never. Like they're always like, oh yeah, I run this like little business. And I'm like, you do not run a little business. Like you run, it's so interesting when you see the way that men message versus women. And there's something, for me, I think my whole life I made people very uncomfortable with like the bigness of who I was. And I did have challenging times where I had to shrink myself for other people. But I think the more I've really understood what I'm exceptional at and stuck to those things, it becomes really easy to stay in that rock solidness that you're talking about and not be rocked by anyone. Because you're like, nah, you can talk about some things, but they're not things that you can ever take away from me.
Who's already borrowing some of her confidence and her energy and this audacity, which is like my word of like it's the word of life now. It's the word of my life. I have it tattooed on my arm, so I'm stuck with it. Okay, so let's dig into that for everybody, because I think right now they're like, okay, but how do I message? So let's in this super noisy world, and you teach on this all the time, how can we also find our voice and our message? Because I think there's a lot of confusion around our top of funnel and our voice.
For sure. And if your messaging is not right at the top of funnel in your content, in whatever you're doing, a top of funnel perspective, it's like nothing you do thereafter is going to work, because you're going to speak to the wrong people and you're going to have a really tough time converting those people. So the number one thing that you need to start with is it's so funny because it's the piece that everyone resists the most, including myself, which is like, if I could only fill my business, whether it be a brick and mortar business, whether it be an online business, with my favorite type of human, and I said to you, I will wave my wand and show you how to do that. It's guaranteed that I can fill your businesses with that person, but you got to pick someone. That is where messaging begins and ends. The strength of your messaging is only as strong as you knowing who you're actually talking to. And if you try and talk to everyone, you talk to no one. Like with AI, the good is not good enough anymore in the online space. Everyone's good. There's a lot of great people. There's talented humans all over the place. Honestly, the people that are winning, I saw it a mile off, and I'm so glad that I doubled down and that I teach my clients to do that, because the more, I've had so many conversations with Laurie, with Brooke. If you are speaking to this particular person, your messaging is so dialed into their psychology, because we've been taught historically in messaging about pain points of like, what's their pain point? What's your ideal client avatar? What hair color do they have? Like, who fucking cares what hair color they have? That's not why anyone's going to buy unless that's what you're selling, right? So for me, it was always about, the same way when I was working with farmers in Ghana, and I had to understand what you're motivated by. How can I get what I want and negotiate this with you, but also create a win-win? You have to be in the psychology of your person, and you can't do that when you're trying to talk to multiple people. Now, when I say that, it's more about not just like, oh, it's Lori and she's this person. It's about actually understanding I call it your $1 million client, and I do it intentionally because everyone's like, wait, so they spend $1 million? Like, how does that work? The point is, they should be your favorite people to work with, and they all have a very defined, if I was to ask all of you right now, I guarantee you could probably pick a couple people that are in your world right now, or people that you've worked with where you're like, if I could fill my business with those people, that's what I would want to do. Well, you can, but you got to speak to them. And you've got to speak to them in a way that they are captivated by what you're sharing. And messaging is simple. Their highest value micro problems, which is not, they can't get clients. Like, that's not a problem. That's a broke person problem. When you are a rich client you do not resonate with, lose weight, get clients, fall in love. You resonate with, I just really want more like amazing humans to come into my DMs and actually just ask me for the link, not have a 3-day long back and forth in the DMs with me. That is a very different problem than I can't get clients. So for me, when I really got down to it and I thought about it through the lens of like, in operations, I did this, in purchasing, I did this. If I understand what your highest value problems are, if you want to make more revenue and you want people to stay with you longer and pay you higher prices, solve higher value problems. And rich clients have different problems than people who are earlier on or are in a very different stage. Now, I caveat this with my $1 million client has nothing to do with their revenue. So I don't care what revenue anyone is at. I would tell you that if someone is brand new into business, I'm not the person that you should hire, because I'm not going to teach you what your genius is, what your offer is. I'm the type of person where I'm like, if you know who you want to talk to and you're solid in what you're amazing at, I can help you scale. But for me, it's way more about the characteristics of that person. So you've got to speak to even the micro things in my messaging. You know how people teach you? Has anyone ever been taught to this offer is not for you if... Like, I fucking hate stuff like, don't do that. Because if you're talking to the right people, you don't need to talk to the people that your offer is not for. So when I talk to my people, I go, you're exceptional at what you do. You get your clients phenomenal results. In fact, if your messaging was as shiny as your work behind the scenes, you would already be doing billions of dollars. Who does that talk to? Mm-hmm. Who does it repel? The minute someone who is not solid in that they're exceptional at what they do, the minute someone reads that does not get their clients great results, they're like, she is not for me. And you have to repel people. So it's high value micro problems, and it's not just the problem. Notice how when I described the experience of the DM example, it's the symptom of how the problem is showing up. So I want you to even if you take nothing else from this, if you write a list of their highest, what what their problem is, and this is the problem, you're too smart for your own good. You have to show your people that this is actually their problem. And most of you are probably talking about, especially if you're in the online space and you sell online products, even more so, you're probably talking about the problem that they have rather than showing them what the problem is. And the way you show people what their problem is by speaking to the symptoms of how it's showing up. So once you know that is 3/4 of the heavy lifting, because then you can start to really get into the psychology of now what's going to make them buy. And that's really about positioning your methodology as the unique solution, which is where you've got to be super, super, super dialed in to what makes you different. And if you have to be able to answer that question, like what makes you different to everybody else in your niche?
Lots to think about. We're all like, okay, so we need to workshop this, but let's talk about we're going to kind of walk through your funnel and how people find you. So I know there's so many different ways that people find you, but what I want to do is kind of walk through that full flow. And I know for me, I believe I found you somehow I landed on one of your podcasts. Mm-hmm. And it was like
secret podcast.
Yeah, it was a secret podcast. I think was it She Makes Bank?
Yeah.
Okay, She Makes Bank. And by the time I was done with that, I was like, give it all to me.
Yeah.
So how did I even land there?
So, and it's connected to exactly what we're talking about. So you can't build, so traditionally in the online space, we were taught, especially in online products, to build ascension-based product suites. So point A of entry is for your earlier on client. Point B, your mid ticket is for your slightly more advanced client. Then your high ticket is for your most advanced client. And I was like, but guess what happens if you do that? You end up filling your top of funnel with people that you don't want to work with in your other offers. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So in 2023, that's when I really started to reverse engineer my top of funnel. So I call it an ideal client magnet, because we don't want leads. We want ideal clients. And then I call it a low ticket taster, because if you create the right top of funnel offers, and bearing in mind that your content is also top of funnel. So again, if you have brick and mortar, your content is also a top of funnel offer, but your low ticket offers, the way people should be getting a taste of what it's like to work with you. And everything that you do should be strategically reverse engineered to the person that you want to fill your world with, and to the ecosystem of offers that you've built. So unlike traditionally taught offer suite, the way that people have always taught ascension modeling, I build in what I call a feminine sales ecosystem. So kind of like a lorry, for me, I have an ideal client magnet at the top, which is my secret podcast. Now, what's really important, especially again, if you have online offers as well, but regardless, top of funnel wise with your content, because PS, your Instagram, your social media is a funnel. You're all using a funnel. Your social media is part of your funnel. You need to make sure that you are creating things at top of funnel that your $1 million client would actually want to consume. So I knew a free masterclass was not going to be something that my ideal client was going to consume, but she would consume a podcast. How do we elevate that and make it feel more premium? We make it a secret audio private feed podcast. And I did this before secret podcasts were a thing, because we set trends in this room. So this is where you create everything in your offer flow for that person, and you make it really easy. Again, because you shouldn't have 55,000 offers. You're much better off having a really clear offer suite that has very clear boundaries around it. This is for you if you want this. They're all interconnected, because it shouldn't be like whiplash around you teach this and you teach this, but you should be connecting the dots for people around this is for you if you want this. So for me, it's really simple. She Makes Bank is messaging. If you want to master your messaging and you want to understand social media content, She Makes Bank is for you. Freedom Funnels is if you want to replace yourself as your sales system. Leanne AI supports you with the messaging and the Freedom Funnels. But it's like, you're either going to come into those things, or you're going to come into my higher ticket proximity, which is more of that at a different level of proximity. And so when you can do that, it means that you can run ads. So for context, we spend around 60 grand a month on ads and make a minimum of $1 million every single month. Like, Hormozi should be jealous of my ad returns. But again, because we have really strategic messaging at the top of funnel, so I bring in less volume than the traditionally taught lead generation strategies, but it's the right people. And so they buy and they spend more.
Mm-hmm. So let's start talking about that, because this again happened to me. This funnel, which is what I then learned was one of your, one of the biggest reasons that you've been able to make the money that you have is your middle of funnel.
Yes.
So, and how people come back and they purchase, you share the whole breakdown.
Yeah. So essentially, if you come in through this, normally I have low ticket tasters, which are kind of under $50 is ideal for a cold audience. So if you're running ads, cold traffic, lowest buying friction is under 50. So I run low ticket tasters because I don't really care how much you spend at the top of funnel. I know you're going to keep buying from me. So low ticket taster, or the ideal client magnet of the secret podcast, and every single episode is reverse engineered around the signature offers. So it's just I'm just nurturing you to buy everything from me. Now, generally what happens is once you come in, here's the thing around funnels. You need to consider your buyer logic when you're building your funnel. So most people, again, do ascension-based funnels. You come in through a low ticket taster or a free offer, then I need to offer you up a $97 thing. Then you're ready for a $2,000 thing. Then you're ready for this $1,000 thing. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, because it should be based on the buyer logic, what they've come into and what is the right next step. So my funnels will range depending on the offer. For example, here's a great example, actually. We have a Make Money bundle, which is $497, which is basically just all of my kind of low ticket offers into one thing in a structured way around messaging, offers, and sales. We did $1.5 million last year from just that offer, and I never publicly sold it. but it was just within the funnels. So that if you came into the secret podcast, that's the first thing that you get offered up, because it links to the episodes really nicely. And then if you buy that, you get offered up She Makes Bank, because it makes a lot of sense based on a lot of what's inside is messaging related, but I'm still threading in the other parts of the ecosystem. So you're always going to know it's this or this. And generally speaking, we just have a high volume of people that just buy one of everything. So they end up being like, I did She Makes Bank, and now I want to renew into Leanne AI. Now I want to upgrade to Freedom Funnels. And I'm a big fan of rewarding people for spending with me. So I like a 30-day window personally for upgrade opportunities. So we kind of really leverage that behind the scenes to make sure we've got a strong ascension pathway, but a lot of it is automated so that it doesn't have to be super human to human. There's no sales conversations outside of like answering emails and maybe creating the odd custom coupon code. But when you can, a big chunk, I always like to tell people, if I stopped doing any proximity coaching tomorrow, we would still do over $500,000 a month in revenue. For context, around how many people buy the signature offers, Leanne AI, which is my AI bot, which again was launched to actually help clients. It wasn't even born from wanting to sell it like as a standalone, and it just kind of organically happened. But it just, for context, like that's the volume of what people come in. I think our LTV last time I checked was around, within the first 30 days, was around like $8,500 of what people spend. But when you look at the transaction numbers of how people go from boom, 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 it's like in as little as minutes, like hours, like people go from a $22,000 to a $50,000 thing, like very, very quickly.
Your stuff is very consumable, and you're such a good teacher that I was able to learn it very quickly because it's very clear. It's not too much, which is also wonderful. Like I didn't feel like inundated.
Yeah.
So that's something I feel like we've all done, where we think in order to deliver the value, it's like so much. And when you're going through it, if you're overwhelmed by the first one, are you going to buy the second one that comes to you? Probably not, and were you able to understand it and integrate it quickly? So that's always something to think about. Because in the beginning, who over delivered in the beginning to the point where you probably made everybody be like, I'm never going to be able to come back and consume this. So why would I come back for more? Something that you do so incredibly well. If you guys go and homework assignment for you guys truly is to go listen to the She Makes Bank podcast, because one of the things that I was like, this is absolutely masterful, is how you keep referring back to everything you're teaching over and over. It is a true reverse engineer of what she's selling, but with so much value added in. But she continues to bring your brain back to, hey, this is like what you need if this is what you want to do, because this is your clear problem. Continuing to state the problem, bring it back to what the solution is. And it just, by the time you're done, your solution is so clear to you as well, because you just got incredible value. But she's told you 3 very clear things that you need if you have these very clear problems. And so I just was like, this was such a masterclass in sales with so much value, that I was like, I just want to buy her stuff because I'm so proud of her. I don't even know who she is yet, but
it's good. And I think like one thing that really helped me at top of funnel that I had to really change was you've got to I had to redefine what my version and definition of value was. I think we think value is we have to teach. I had to course correct and realize actually the most valuable thing that I can do for you, especially at the top of funnel in my content, in my secret podcast, in my low ticket tasters, is not actually teach you how to do this. It's actually to show you this is why what you've done isn't working, hasn't worked. And this is what your problem actually is. So you have that aha. If you can create that aha light bulb moment, you have to do this in your content and in your top of funnel. To get people to buy from you quickly, you simply need to go, holy shit, you're right. That makes so much sense. So when I say show, don't tell them, that's what I mean. You've got to be like, hey, listen, the reason why people don't buy from your email list isn't because you'll tell me the story of like, my people just love to buy from me on social media or when I'm live. It's like, that's not the case. It's because your emails are written like corporate Colin and you're spending all of your time talking about the features of your offer and you're actually not talking about their highest value micro problems. Here's what happened when you do that. So you need to create this like really strong aha moment for people by addressing, again, when you're talking to the right person, what have they tried already? Why doesn't it work? So you likely all know the answer to that question. Because the first thing I would ask you if you were doing a messaging intensive with me is like, okay, so tell me about what it is that you do. and what drives you nuts about your industry. Like, so people come to you and go like, oh, you should build an offer suite for people at stage A, stage B, stage C. Whereas I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, they need to do this. It's found in the thing that you already drives you nuts. You have to make your $1 million client high value problem aware of like, hey, this is why it's not working. There is a better alternative, and this is a unique solution. So this is where something for me around having that really defined offer suite is like having very repeatable things that you become known for. That's your messaging anchors. So there are basically, to build authority, there are 3 different authority anchors. And if you know these 3 things, you can build a wildly successful business. The first one is your visual anchor. When you see somebody with a nose strip, who do you think about?
Alex Ramosi.
Right? That's a visual anchor. There are people who do content. What's her name? She's Pink Sparrow Creative. I always think about her because she wears a pink blazer in every single video. That is a visual anchor. So it doesn't have to be for me, my visual anchor is a very produced style of reels because I'm a fashion girl and like I love creating that type of content. That's my visual anchor. I have a very like signature aesthetic where people can see a brand image without my name on and they know that it's mine. They just know. So my visual anchor is curated, but yours can be completely under curated, but you've got to have a really consistent visual message that you become really recognized for. The next piece of it is your messaging anchor. So this is where you're like, what do you stand for? What do you stand against? So unfortunately, like it or not, people bond over a villain faster than they bond over a hero. And this is the thing that always like people loathe. But honestly, you have to have a villain. And it's not about a particular person. I talk about bro funnels. I have mad respect for the bros. I have massive amounts of respect for Alex Hormozi. But I'm like, this is why these don't work for women. And I'm like, this is a hill I'll die on. Like, I don't just like know it. I know it. Like, I haven't just proven it for myself. I've proven it for thousands of women. So for me, my messaging anchors are really wrapped around my unique ways that I do things and my messaging around like the bro kind of ways of doing stuff and traditionally taught messaging ways. Now, the third one is your methodology anchor. So you have to, again, this is the one that trips everybody up because we're like, well, everyone's teaching the same thing, right? There are a million people teaching funnels and messaging, but I'm like, nobody teaches it like me. But how do you communicate that to your people? That's where you do things like your proprietary terms. When I say, rather than saying your ideal client, I say $1 million client. It's immediately disruptive. And it's got like, okay, when people think about me and they hear me talk about that, it's instantly subconsciously jarring because they haven't heard that vocabulary before. I talk about my funnels in an invisible sales system that works harder than you do. And then people are like, okay, an invisible sales system. So you have to have a unique methodology. Freedom funnels, shocking. What does that do for you? It's like, you've got to have really strong, unique methodology that just makes your solution feel unique to everything else they've tried and everything else that's available in the market. And that goes for you whether you're a Pilates studio, brick and mortar, online businesses. It doesn't, the same 3 anchors apply. It doesn't matter what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I realized like when I was explaining some things, I'm like, I think I'm saying this in the words that she uses because it's so anchored like stories that sell. And I'm like, this is so good because when you're referring to something, especially when you're in like putting it in the copy, when you're putting it in your podcast, when you're talking about it, your people now have anchors that it's like, oh, that's what she's talking about. Okay, that's what she does. So when I talk about Leanne, I always think, oh, she's really great with stories that sell. That's the name of some of her stuff. Like, oh, that's Rich Queen. Oh, that's like, there's so many anchors around Leanne that when I talk about her, there's like 4 or 5 things that come up for me that are very clear on exactly what she does. And so when we're thinking about what we offer, do you have names of it at all? Like that you can tell people when you're standing in front of people exactly what you're teaching so that they can go and repeat that?
Oh yeah. And this is the cool thing about that. Yeah. How many of you here have been copied by people? Okay, well, it's going to happen to you. If it hasn't happened to you already, it's going to fucking happen to you. So the cool thing is about when you really own these things, regardless of like, PS, I'm a huge fan of owning your intellectual property. So that's like a separate conversation, not one of my geniuses, but please look at trademark and copywriting, especially of your signature stuff. More importantly, when you show up nonstop and you have a strong visual anchor, whenever anyone copies my style of content, they're like, oh, she's doing a Leanne. She's doing Leanne. Whenever they hear someone talk about invisible sales system stories that sell rich clients, when they hear people say soft girl millions, everybody knows that they're like, oh, she's being inspired by Leanne. So what happens is when people copy you and you are known for less, but you dominate it, they drive authority to you inadvertently when they copy you. So it's even better, because it's like if you've got the legal stuff set up, then you've got like the legal stuff, but you've also got the subconscious authority where people start to see you as more of an authority because people are copying you. The irony.
And it's also just so easy for your client to understand, because if you're like, okay, yeah, I teach funnels. Okay, but what kind of funnels and what does that mean?
And that's a biggie, because a lot of you know, one of my geniuses, and whether it's the projector in me, but my genius is taking highly complex topics and making it incredibly simple. 9 times out of 10, the problem with funnels and women has always been that it feels like Latin, kind of like real estate, like any of the stuff that we learn. It's not that complicated when you actually understand what people are saying. Your job around your work, so many people are so attached to the way you describe it. It doesn't matter how you want to describe it, or actually it doesn't even really matter what you want to call it. It matters that it makes sense to the person on the other end of the screen. So if you cannot explain it to me in a sentence in a way that I'm like, that makes so much sense, it's not going to land for people. So with your unique methodologies, like, don't get emotionally attached to acronyms and things that don't make any sense. It's got to be clear over clever. In order, when I say invisible sales system, you subconsciously immediately know what that means without knowing what it means. When I say rich clients, you don't have to make too many mental leaps to understand. Like, you want with messaging is cinematic. Like, you're meant to be painting pictures with your words. So you want to use language that is going to do that. And you do that when you're talking to their highest value problems and the symptoms that those things are creating for them, because that's what they self-identify with. But you also do it in the way you talk about your unique methodology. So for all of you, it's a nudge that you're too smart for your own good. What's easy for you, not easy for other people to understand. And the more you can talk about it in a way that anyone would be able to understand it, especially your rich, dreamy client, they're going to buy faster.
What role does social media play for you in that top of funnel?
I mean, it's a biggie, but what's actually really funny for me is the fact that, as you can see, like, I have 46,000 followers, I think now. I actually still have a lot of people that buy my stuff that don't ever follow me on social media, which this is a cool topic, because I got told in the beginning, like, especially as a woman in the online space, that you don't need a website, don't need a funnel, don't need this. Having a strong website that's really brand resonant, like, go to my website, because everything is so strategically designed. When I thought about my website, I was like, I want an intro video, and the button before you even enter the website says, let's get rich. It's like a subconscious sales strategy before you even enter the site. It's like you're activating identity before somebody has even hit the site. If you build your website, especially if you're running ads, you underestimate the vast volume of traffic that goes to your site. People think social media is the be all and end all. If you have a podcast, I could make millions from my podcast and my website without necessarily needing social media. Social media, of course, is important. And if you have a business in 2026, like it or not, it's important. But you could strip away my social media and I would still be able to, with the strength of my messaging with ads and then bringing people into the funnel, I would still be able to make millions of dollars. Maybe not 23 million, but I probably could still do 10.
Is that a relief to anyone?
We know some people in here don't love social media. Like,
and it's okay if you don't, but here's what I would say. You don't hate social media. You hate the way you're approaching it. So for me, with everything in my business, a big part of my brand, and especially Soft Girl Millions, is around removing yourself as the cost in your business. Now, Soft Girl in the online space had got a reputation of being, like, funnily enough, Pilates, which I love, but Pilates, baking sourdough, like being a Porsche wife. So for me, Soft Girl Millions is not about having, like, an empty calendar. I don't want an empty calendar. Like, I've got a legacy to build. Like, I'm here for a big, audacious, full life. I've got little kids. We have a real estate empire. I have 2 bonus children. I have 4 kids total. And I have a big, audacious life. I'm here this week in LA launching a show. For me, what's important is more the parts where in my business where I'm like, oh, this feels heavy. Why does it actually feel heavy? And it's rarely, sometimes it is the thing where I'm like, TikTok made me want to die. I was like, there's no way I'm going on that platform. I do not like it. And I'm like, I don't need to be on there. I love Instagram because for me, it's creativity and I communicate in the way that's easiest for me. That's also the most efficient way that I can do things. So the irony is, if you looked at my social media, you'd be like, holy shit, this is so much work because it's curated. The irony is we do a shoot every like 6 to 8 weeks. We make a ton of reels and take a ton of photos. So day to day, I don't even have to worry. I've got stuff on deck where all I've got to do is add text over the top and post. So for me, that was a really easy way of making social media really easy. But you've got to kind of identify the parts of your business where the heaviness is there. It's like, where am I the cost, and how can I remove myself as the cost?
Okay, let's talk about your AI bot, because I use that frequently. Mm-hmm. It's so wonderful. I think there's a lot of people in here who are curious about, number one, having one, but also for you, can you tell us how many people are on it? How do they usually come through and find that as well?
Yeah, so it's so funny because Brooke, who is here, so I met Brooke, I manifested Brooke, I like to tell people this, but I manifested Brooke in September, October of 2024. 2024 was an $11 million year. I'm just like getting I'm like, what year are we? 2020, yeah, 2025. So $11 million year. Now, how many of you have like scaled like in a season of scaling where you've been like, holy shit, like this is a lot? Because one thing that we don't talk about, like I think enough, is we glamorize like quantum leaps, right? When you're like, holy shit, that is a big leap. We glamorize those I'm pretty sure my eyelashes just fell out, but never mind. It's hot in here. Everything's like melting.
It is.
So we glamorize the quantum leaps and the income jumps, but honestly, I hit a point where, again, the gift of it was I'm exceptional at what I do. The curse of that was everybody wanted to plug into me nonstop, and it was like insatiable thirst, which was great for revenue, and it was not great for me from a workload capacity. And I was ironically anti-AI. Like ChatGPT, maybe I can't even say it properly, made me want to like put pins in my eyes. When clients would bring to me messaging that they'd done with AI, I was like, this is fucking awful. Like I can tell that you wrote it. But when I met Brooke, I was in the peak actually of a real season of like massive scaling where I could not keep up with demand. And again, I'm a super giving, if I'm all in, like if you're my client, there is no I'm all in. So for me, that was the problem. I was the bottleneck because I do all of my own social media. I'm like, no one's writing my messaging for me. No one can write like me. No one can support. Like I have support inside certain elements, but no one can do messaging support the way that I do, or strategy the way that my brain works. It's very difficult to teach that to somebody. So when I met Brooke, I was like, I need to clone myself. Literally, I was like, I need to clone myself. And my husband, ironically, had been like, you should clone yourself with AI. And I was like, ew. No, gross. And then I met Brooke and she was like, I can help you build an AI bot. And I was like, say less. To clone yourself. I'm like, yeah. So we bonded really quickly. And it was actually with Brooke's help that I was able to, we launched Leanne AI within weeks. I gave her all of my IP. I'm like, here is all of the stuff to build the bot with. And she helped me get it. Honestly, I joke that me and Brooke made AI bots cool because no one had an AI bot when we launched Leanne AI. And I was excited because I did this whole like Avenger style, the branding is like, for me, I can sell anything with a gorgeous graphic. So I did this like Avenger style version of me on the graphic. And then I tested Leanne AI and I assumed it was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. I was shook. And again, it makes sense because it's what you program your bot with is the quality of the output that comes out. So when we looked at the richness of what we put into the bot, of course it was exceptional, especially in comparison to like normal ChatGPT stuff. So when I launched Leanne AI, like no one had like bots in the coaching space. Like no one was doing it when we started doing it. And it was actually launched, like I said, to actually help with client support because I just couldn't keep up with everyone. I couldn't keep up with the demand. And my clients, I immediately wrote it out behind the scenes and my clients were like, it was insane. I remember the first week I launched it, I went from having like 50 people on a call with me for like 5 hours where they just could not get enough. There was like 14 people came to a call and they were like, I don't even need to ask you anything because I've already asked Leanne AI. Like, this is awesome. But it just removed me as the cost. And it was very effortless because of like hiring somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing. I wouldn't have been able to do that myself, but I did have the richness of the intellectual property and I was available for the solution because there needed to be one. And then I met Brooke and thankfully she helped me launch Leanne AI and now we have thousands of people subscribe to it as a separate standalone offer.
Mm. Okay, I want to be able to let them ask some questions as well. Who has, just for a temperature, who has some questions? Okay, but before we go into that, I would love to know potentially like an underrated or unexpected way that you feel like you've generated a lot of leads, like something maybe you didn't expect.
Oh, that's a great question. So in November of last year, I hosted a live event. Much to my I was like, why am I doing this to myself? It's so much like doing in-person stuff. Again, how like I'm an all-in or all-out girly and I'm an aesthetics girly. So of course everything was going to be like next level. But I did a 150 person in-person event in November of 2025. And when I did the event, it was very much around such a relevant conversation to messaging too, because I had really built a brand as like the audacious, like audacity is my middle name, right? That's clear. And a lot of people are very attracted to me because of the very bold branding and the very rich queen red lips. Like when I don't have red on my nails, people have a palpitations. They're like, where's the red? Why do you not have red nails? But for me, I'd really built a brand that, again, somewhere along the way, I was like, I'm starting to feel a little underexpressed in my brand, in the sense that I felt like everyone I needed to be the audacious version of me. When truth be told, that season that I spoke about with when I met Brooke was one of the hardest seasons that I've had in a long time. And I'm someone that I've historically struggled with depression my entire life. And I've been very open about that journey in different ways, in ways that were very comfortable to me. But with Soft Girl Millions, my intention was actually to step into that room and step onto the stage and not teach strategy, not teach messaging. Like you can learn from me in my programs for that. It was very much around pulling back the curtain around like, how have I become so audacious? And how do I still have challenges around mental health, including in November of 2024, when I was at the peak of like a very, very depressive like period of time. And I went into the event last year and I figured if I'm doing the event, I may as well do a movie around it. Like, of course, we're doing an event. Why not do a movie around it? So why not make a movie while we're doing the event? So we did. And I invited the team to my house and I shared very vulnerable things to share around that season and shared things that I had never shared before. And we released it. And we originally sold the movie. And we did, I can't remember what we did. We sold it for like 333. I think we made like 30 something grand. When I watched it back, I refunded everybody that bought because I knew that like everyone needs to be able to watch this. There are people that need to watch this. And it was one of the most vulnerable things I've ever done because there's something different about sharing your heart and soul to people that are like in your world. When you're like anyone on the internet, we ran ads to that. We had the lowest cost per lead that we've ever had. And it really shifted the perception of my brand because actually what was missing from the brand was people were like, oh, well, she's AI. Like she's too perfect. She's AI. She's not even real. And when I actually showed that I was real and I actually really struggled with depression, in fact, I considered suicide in November of 2024, everything changed. So to answer your question in a very emotional way, it was something that was incredibly difficult to do. And again, I was like, we're going to run ads to this. Like, I don't know whether you've ever been on the internet, but people are savage. So you're really opening yourself up in your most vulnerable time. But it was the best decision that we ever made. So that created such a huge, you know what's so funny? Nothing tells you you're on the right track. Like the fact that we had $1 million week. I didn't sell anything at my event from stage. Didn't sell one thing. Did not sell. And we had $1 million week before we even hosted the live event. And the movie and what we did at Soft Girl Millions, I'm so proud of it. And that's why the show was born. Because I was like, we need to have more of these conversations. It's kind of tricky to do that in 150 characters of an Instagram post. So.
Well, I cried at your podcast.
So now I'm repaying the favor.
Exactly. I was like, why am I crying? First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. Who resonates with those moments? We are literally all in this room. And it's funny that when you all show up in this room, Chris and I all have a bit of an inkling of who you really are. Because if we attracted you, just like how if Leanne attracted you, her brightness also that she has that we see in us, there's probably also, we're fighting something at the same time.
I always say like the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow. Like show me someone that like shines bright and I'll show you someone with some shadowy shit that they've had to conquer together.
Who's got some shadowy shit?
I'm like,
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you sharing that. And you know, when you had said, you know, what's missing from the brand, I think that is such a great question to ask ourselves. Like, what are we showing and consistently sharing, but how do we feel that we are not like truly showing ourselves to where people can really, you cut right through the noise with that one.
Yeah.
Like literally straight to the heart of, is this you as well?
And the way to identify that, by the way, because I think it's a tricky one for people, again, from messaging, in order to get people to feel you, there's a difference between being seen and being felt. And being felt makes you a lot more money than being seen, which is why people with hundreds of thousands and millions of followers hire me that are making a fraction of what I'm making. In order for people to actually really feel you, you often need to show them the opposite. So for me, audacity is as easy as breathing. The opposite of that is vulnerability, is raw. And it doesn't mean that you then have to live there, because there was a part of me that was like, God, now do I have to like keep sharing content about having depression? Like I was a little bit like, it felt janky to me for a second. Audacity content feels very easy for me. And I really loved that that was as easy for me to create content, when I actually realized that it doesn't have to come from a place of pressure. Like you don't have to be like 2 posts every week need to be about depression and suicide. Like that's not what the message is. The point is am I giving you more of me? And it was actually indicative of just like, even one of the biggest things I heard behind the sessions when people came into my world, when I'd be like doing a client testimonial interview, I'd be like, what surprised you about me? And they were like, you're actually really funny. And I'm like, that was fucking surprising to you? But when I looked at my social media, I was like, I can actually see how you could miss that, because I wasn't bringing it forward. And so when I actually started to show more of my humor in my stories, in my face to cam reels, like we all communicate our personality traits in slightly different ways. For me, it was like, now if you go to my social media, you will find that. You will find like more of the full expression of me, is like what I call it, around like talking about the more vulnerable things, but also sharing more of like the personality. Because again, like if you have a personal brand, it's really important that you share. You know, it's different when you have a brand that is about the brand. That is different, but you still got to make people feel something. So often the same principles apply. Even if we're talking about a brand and a physical product, you need to make people feel something. You have to show the range, the opposites. Otherwise it's one tone. And even the best things get boring if you just stick there.
Well, thank you so much.
It's just so
for
fun.
coming.
Thank you.
This was so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
oh
for
my
having
gosh.
me.